Hi friends! It's cold, gloomy, and feeling very much like winter outside. So let's turn this house into a space filled with some cozy, festive magic. Lately, I've been loving whimsical woodland-inspired decor using natural materials. I'm going to work with what I have as I think that's the best way to do things both financially and for sustainability, but I'm going to be leaning heavily on things like preserved evergreen, dried oranges that I made last year, and items foraged from my yard to bring some of the outdoors in this season. So let's get some holiday vibes going in here and get started. First, I'm pulling out my preserved greenery. I have both juniper and cedar preserved greenery, and I love them so much. I love preserved greens because they look so much better than plastic garland. I feel better that I'm not purchasing a bunch of plastic. They smell amazing, and I can keep them for years. I got this juniper 5 years ago. It's the very first preserved plant I purchased, and it still looks and smells fantastic. I am starting with the chandelier in the dining room. I already have curly willow on here, which I absolutely love. If you missed that, check out my fall decorating video to see how I put it together. I have decorated this chandelier with just greenery and oranges in the past, so I think I'm going to try something new and leave the curly willow on here this year and add greenery on top. Because I already have the structure of these branches on here, I don't need any wire or other mechanics to attach the greenery. I can just tuck it into the curly willow. I started with greenery on the top and the bottom of the sphere, but I eventually ended up taking that off because it felt a little bit too chaotic to me. After the base of greenery is done, I added some pine cones, and that's it. I'm really liking the simplicity of this. It feels very woodsy and natural and cozy. Next, I cleaned up our dining table and added this dark green tablecloth, a runner, and some beeswax taper candles. Again, I'm loving the simplicity of this and that I won't have to move anything big or bulky to host or use this table. Next, I cleared off our sideboard so that I have a space to work, and I got to work on decorating the egg chair. This chair is one of my very favorite corners of our home. It's so cozy and wonderful to sit in. The only thing I don't love about it is the look of the metal bar that attaches to our beams. In my fall decorating video, I tried using dried and preserved florals to hide the bar for the very first time, and I really enjoyed the result. So we are going to try to do that again, but with some updated Christmas greenery. I'm starting with this branch from our yard that I have been needlessly hoarding for much too long. It fell off one of our trees in a storm last year, and it looked so cool that I had to keep it, but I couldn't figure out where to put it. So it's been living in the studio, sadly waiting for its time to shine until now. I tried going right in with greenery, and then I realized that this would look very cool if I wrapped the branch in lights, and that would probably be easier to do before I hung it and covered it with greens. So I took everything down and wrapped the branch in lights first and then rehung it. I used fairy lights for this, which can be kind of a tangly mess, but it meant that they would be battery operated and I wouldn't have to hide a cord to plug it in. I also forgot that I had two different lengths of fairy lights and used the short ones by accident first, so I had to undo it and rewrap with the longer strand, but we got there in the end, and oh my goodness, it was worth the struggle once it was done, because it looks so magical and cozy when it's all lit up. Once the branch was hung, I started adding my greenery. I already had some chicken wire wrapped around the metal bar at the top from when I decorated for fall, so I didn't have to do very much in the way of mechanics to secure everything. For the branch itself, I tucked the greens under the fairy lights where possible, and there were just a few spots where I had to use a few inches of wire to secure the greens. This was such a fun process. I had this vision in my head of what this might look like, but I wasn't sure if it would look as good in real life. So it was so exciting to see it come together and look so magical and whimsical and festive. The next spot I'm tackling is this dresser on the other side of our dining room. I had this crazy idea to do a Yule log here, but I wasn't totally sure how it was all gonna work out. I tried this log first and it was way too big. Alright, that's way too large. That did not look that large outside. That's way too big. No way. So I went back outside and got a different log that fit the space much better. Like I said, I wasn't really sure how this was all going to come together, so it was a bit of trial and error. I started by laying down some greenery and then placed the log on top. I liked the look of this concept, but it proved to be kind of a challenge because the stems of the greenery meant that there wasn't a totally flat space for the log to sit, and it kept moving after I placed it. I think next time I would get juniper and tuck it in around the log instead, but that didn't really work with the shape of these cedar branches, and I didn't have enough juniper to do that this year. Next, I added some of the dried orange garland that I made last year, another couple cedar branches, and a beeswax candle on top. I had wanted to drill holes and put taper candles in here, but I just didn't get around to it, so maybe next year. I added our bar tray and a few other decor items, and that's our sideboard done. For our coffee table, I kept it very simple and just swapped out the decor on our tray here. This wreath is actually one of the centerpieces I made for our wedding, so it's super special. I just tucked that on top of the tray and then added our coasters, a pine cone, and a Christmas candle. I'm bringing a little touch of Christmas cheer to the kitchen with some garland and lights around our windows. We don't have a ton of extra horizontal space in here, so this is my favorite way to bring some festivity and warmth to the kitchen without adding clutter or sacrificing counter space. I did have to add one of our little gnomes to the windowsill though. We also did this last year, so there are already finishing nails in the woodwork, and I can tuck this greenery in without any extra hardware. I started by wrapping the trunk of the tree in lights, keeping the lights really tight to the center for the first layer. This can be kind of a pain, and I definitely got a face full of tree while doing this, but it was worth it. I love the dimension that 2 different layers of lights add to the tree. After wrapping the trunk, I realized that the only other lights I had that were a warm white and not a cool white were actually curtain lights, so there are a bunch of strands coming off of one main strand. I wasn't really sure if I should use these, but it actually worked out really well. I just ran the main strand up the tree vertically, and then I used the offshoot strands to wrap around the tree at various levels. I'm guessing this is going to be a huge pain to untangle at the end of the season, but you gotta use what you got, and that's future Lillian's problem, you know? I'm just now realizing I forgot to take my apron off in this footage because I ended up having to multitask a little bit. I was prepping a birthday dinner for my best friend, so I was juggling cooking and decorating this day. It was a little chaotic, but we made it work. We have this little table that normally sits where the Christmas tree is right now, so I wanted to dress it up a little bit to make it feel more purposeful in its new location. I wanted to put some greens on here along with the photo frames that normally live on this table and some of our Christmas houses. This proved to be a little bit harder than I thought it would be. It took quite a lot of trial and error to figure out how to make everything lay nicely. I ended up keeping the greens pretty simple instead of adding any extras like dried oranges or pine cones. I just dressed them up with some fairy lights. I used a couple of my vintage books to add some height for the little wooden houses, and then I tucked in some bottle brush trees around everything. Last but definitely not least is our fireplace mantle. I can't do anything too extra here because our TV is above the fireplace and the soundbar takes up most of the mantle space, but I was able to tuck some greens on either end of the mantle and I hung our stockings as well. I played around with some orange garland, but I wasn't sure if it stuck out too much from everything else, so I ended up keeping it simple. Thanks for joining me as I bring some holiday magic to our home. I know the holidays can be a complicated time for many. I hope this video brought you some joy, and I hope you have a cozy holiday season with your people, whether related or chosen. From my home to yours, happy holidays. Until next time.